that.
We didn't see that coming at all.
It is 7 on the dot.
7 on the dot, okay, 7 o'clock. And as I mentioned earlier, I would like to keep the meeting a little short so I can go home and get to sleep. It's been a long 5 days. So I will call the regular meeting of the Woodstock Town Board of February 8th to order. I have a couple of quick announcements. One, I don't have all the details yet, but I'm starting to get a little information from the county that next week they're going to be holding a few sessions at the community center. This is not just for Woodstockers, but for all county residents, with FEMA, the Veterans Administration, and a number of other agencies who can help assist people get help and assistance, financial aid and whatnot with regard to this latest storm. So I would just ask, watch our website. I'll contact the press when I have more information, and we'll also put it out on Facebook when I have more details. I believe what they were thinking, the dates, but they're not confirmed, would be next Tuesday and next Friday at the community center from 10 to 6. But that's very preliminary right now. And as I get more information, I'll put it out there. I'll get it out as soon as I can. And again, I'll use Facebook and as a primary tool. The other announcement, and I asked Jackie Manganero to be here for this. Jackie is a strong advocate for ADA compliance and sidewalks and whatnot. And it's something, you know, even though sometimes she and I don't always agree, we're great allies, and we've been fighting together for a long time. We've been pushing the state. A few years ago, they did most of Route 212, and they left a very short section from Tinker Street out towards the post office undone. And then the town came in and did a section with some federal monies that we got, but it still left that one section undone. And I have to give Dave Corrigan from DOT a lot of credit. He's been a great ally as well. And we've been pushing and pushing and pushing. This project would just be too big for the regional office to handle. So he's been pushing to make it a state project. Well, I got a letter a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't release it because I wanted to make sure that I understood it. It was pretty vague. But I would like to announce we're in preliminary design phase to see the rest of that road taken care of. There are 4 bridges, 4 stream crossings that need to be replaced. And along with that will include paving that entire section. And along with the paving will be sidewalks. I have seen, yeah, Jackie, I have seen preliminary designs. We're in very, very, very early stages, and construction is still a ways away. They're talking about the spring of 2024, but that will be here before you know it. And the plans that I've seen include sidewalks on both sides. They would be repairing the sidewalks on the westbound side and bringing all the drop downs into ADA compliance, so that we would have sidewalks from the green all the way out to the post office. On the other side, it calls for installing new sidewalks. So it looks like we're going to get that all taken care of. It'll include curbing. They do fall just one property short of reaching the Como Fields, the sledding hill. So that's one of the things I'm going to try and push for, so that we can get that right out to that sledding hill. The other area that's a little dodgy at this point, it's a little unclear, is in front of Twin Gables. They're not showing any work done there. But I can tell you that a year ago, I put in a request with Kevin Cahill's office for a grant. I forget the amount. It could be $60,000, $70,000. We had done a preliminary estimate on what it would cost to push that wall back, to do some landscaping, to re-landscape, and also to have Central Hudson move that telephone pole. So fingers crossed. I'm very excited about this. When I actually, Dave Corrigan didn't know about this, and when I called him up, he says, whoa, 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 this sounds too good to be true. Let me check. And when he confirmed the budget that they have in place for this, he said, absolutely, it looks like this is real and that it includes all sidewalks. So, and Laura, I'm going to ask you to be involved with me on this one. We're going to have a meeting with the state DOT in the next couple of weeks, a preliminary meeting. And Grace, once we have that preliminary meeting, I'll ask you to come in and join us with the Complete Streets Committee. So,
Great, thank you.
With that,
And congratulations. This sounds really wonderful.
You know, it feels really good. It's one of the most exciting letters I got. And I actually, it took me days to really to believe it and confirm it, but I am very excited. It's a great potential project, and I think it's going to happen. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to working with you on it, with you, Bill, and also Grace for Complete Streets. I think this is fabulous.
So with that, Grace, I'll turn the meeting over to you. The town clerk tonight is Lynn Severett, also my deputy supervisor. She's filling in for Jackie, who's suffering terribly down in Florida. She deserves the break, though. But Jackie did ask that any materials that you might have, if you could email it to us, so that she could include it in the minutes.
Okay.
So.
I think actually Ashley and every member of the town board already have the Complete Streets policy that we submitted to you. So that could be part of the minutes.
Okay, I'll make sure she gets that then.
Okay, if you need it again, I can.
No, I have that.
Okay. Okay, so basically I'm here to talk about the town board adopting a Complete Streets policy for the town of Woodstock. And I'll be joined by Ram Rekstaffen and Kirk Ritchie to discuss it further and discuss some specific elements of Complete Streets. In adopting a Complete Streets policy, Woodstock will be joining thousands of towns, cities, counties, states, and the federal government in approving a policy that puts people rather than cars at the center of any decisions that affect how we move around. The Complete Streets Committee was created as a result of a recommendation from the Comprehensive Plan, and it's tasked with helping the town develop and implement a Complete Streets vision and practices for our town. And we're very pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you about this policy now. And I hope you got a chance to review it. But if you did not, we will be available to answer any questions as you consider its adoption, to hear any ideas or suggestions you might have about the policy, and to help facilitate any necessary modifications. We hope that working together, we'll be able to return to the town board meeting in a month or two, and to a meeting in which the policy is actually adopted, and Woodstock becomes a Complete Streets town. That's our goal. Before we go into any specifics about the policy itself, I'd like to give a short explanation of what Complete Streets is, because there are two new town board members, and who were not here since our earlier Complete Streets presentation, and a brief introduction and refresher on Complete Streets might be useful for everybody. Okay, Complete Streets is a global effort to make our streets and roads safe, accessible, and enjoyable for everybody who uses them. That includes pedestrians, transit unit users, cyclists, families with children in carriages, residents, visitors, people with disabilities, delivery workers, as well as motorists. Complete Street policies can help guide all decisions that affect movement on our roads and streets, from speed limits to signage and to infrastructure building, like considering roadways that include bike and pedestrian pathways, and things like putting in sidewalks and sidewalk repair and rehabilitation, like Bill just announced for today. Okay. I'm sure you all noticed the massive changes around the world that accelerated during the pandemic to make streets and roads bike and pedestrian friendly. Now, with complete streets, it's time to help Woodstock move from a 19th and 20th century functionality to a 21st century vision with roads and streets that accommodate everybody safely and enjoyably. Adopting and implementing a complete streets policy will help make Woodstock a safer, more vibrant, and even better place to live and work and visit. And it will make the town eligible for many sources of expertise and funding to help that vision become a reality. We want to talk now specifically about what the policy includes and how it can be implemented. So Kirk, take it away. Oops, is he
Yeah,
here?
I'm
Kirk,
You're on mute, I think, Kirk.
you're muted. You're muted, Kirk.
yeah, I realize that. Thank you.
Okay.
I thought I unmuted myself, but I didn't. So one of the things that we wanted to address this evening and speaking about the core commitment associated with complete streets is some of the behavioral changes within our town and the different agencies that we have. So I just wanted to speak a little bit to that, and then I'll be handing it off to Ram to get into some further details about the committee's role. The town of Woodstock recognizes that all roadway projects, including new construction and maintenance upgrades and reconstruction, as what Bill just alluded to, are opportunities for complete streets design principles. And the DOT, New York State DOT has in our report of these policies, we show a link that the DOT has articulating what those policies are. So all transportation infrastructure and street design projects requiring funding or approval by the town board, as well as projects funded by the county, state, and or federal government shall adhere to the town's complete streets policy. This also includes private funding, private housing, and commercial developments, which we'll work with in some of the zoning revisions work that we're working on, again, as a result of the comprehensive plan. One of the things about the complete streets is this aspect of context sensitivity approach. And it's a context sensitive approach is, again, these details are available via New York State DOT. But it basically asks some questions about designs and first about the needs and purpose of the transportation project, and then equally addresses safety, mobility, and preservation of scenic and historic elements of our town, and then also environmental and other community values. So there's an element of that we're looking in this policy that that a context-sensitive solution would be incorporated into the complete streets with every single project going forward, transportation project going forward. So one of the things is that complete streets may achieve through single elements. This policy is looking maybe at single elements, not a large and done in an iterative way or an incremental way that we would introduce these projects or these ideas within each of the projects through a series of smaller improvements and maintenance activities over time. So again, these are efforts to find ways in which the behavioral changes that that this policy recommends having between agencies, between the town board and the transportation department and others. We look forward to working with you and helping bring that about. And I'd like to then now hand this over to Ram, and he can finish things up for us.
Thank you, Kirk. And thank you, Grace. I think that another important part of our policy is that it lays out the roles that our committee will play for the town as we go forward. And it's a long list that we have in the proposal, so I'm just going to highlight a few of them right now. First, the Complete Streets Committee will develop measures for evaluating the effectiveness of our Complete Streets effort in the town, and will prepare a biannual report for the town to talk about how we've done on those. Second, the committee will research changes into zoning laws that will promote Complete Streets goals, and the committee will propose those changes to the Zoning Revisions Committee. Third, the committee will identify and apply for funding on behalf of the town to pay for Complete Streets projects. And fourth, the Complete Streets Committee will provide education to town agencies, to the town board, and to the public regarding Complete Streets, and also gather input regarding Complete Streets goals from those same parties. The Complete Streets Committee will perform other functions as well, and those are spelled out in this policy. But this concludes our presentation, and we're happy to discuss any questions that you might have about the proposal. And you can address it to any of us. Thank you guys for listening, and let us know if there's anything you saw in there that we can answer for you or expand on.
Grace, Kirk, and Ram, thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions from the board right now?
Well, I always have something to say, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Laura.
But as people know, I am liaison to the Complete Streets Committee, and thank the entire committee. I think you've done a great job on this and a lot of things, but certainly on the policy. The policy is a huge step forward, and great job and great presentation to Grace and Kirk and Ram. As far as the board, I know, and I of course have seen the policy. I agree with the policy, but it's important that everybody look at it because maybe it needs to be modified. I think it looks good, but then if you have it to do, the policy might say you're going to do this. Whoever you are, you're going to want to read it, see if it's okay with you and if you agree. So it would be great if we could have a goal of when we might make a decision. I think, if we have feedback for the Complete Streets Committee, we should give it at some point. If we like it, the policy as is, that's great. But, as things go, it's a draft document. The Complete Streets is looking for feedback if we have feedback. And I don't know whether we can have like a plan of, maybe in March, we'll make a decision to say, do we approve it? Or maybe if we had some goal of when people should get their feedback into Grace. If you're looking for this in your inbox, Grace sent it to us on February 2nd, before the world changed for us on February 4th. But it's in all of our inboxes on February 2nd. And I don't know if we have a goal of when we as a board, a goal for when we should have our feedback back to Grace. It'd be nice if we had a target for that so we can get this policy on its way to becoming adopted by the board.
Let's plan to, I'll put it on the agenda for the second meeting in March. Let me just pull up the calendar. That will give everybody ample time to read it, digest it, and come back with feedback.
Okay, it would be the 15th because same days as in February because we have 28 days this month. So it will be March 15th.
So the only thing is, if you recall, some business meetings we pushed, so that might actually be the 22nd.
All right, you're right. You are correct. Oh, and you're totally correct. Yes, it's the 22nd, which is actually the same day as the Complete Streets meeting. So they can't come when we discuss it. So perhaps it can be the first meeting in March.
Unless they come and we plan to do a.
We can come.
We can come.
We'll be there.
We'll be here. Absolutely.
So March
22nd.
2nd.
I would appreciate if there were comments or modifications that you were going to make, that you could get them to us by the 15th, so that if there's something that requires some kind of modification, that we could bring it back to you before the 22nd, the meeting on the 22nd, and then possibly we would have a final document for your approval.
I would suggest even do it the week before, like the 7th.
That would be great.
The board members, if anyone has comments or thoughts, and you can redline the document and then share it with the town board and Complete Streets Committee.
So the 7th would be a Monday. So everybody.
7th or 8th.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And then we'll take a look at it and we'll get it back to you annotated and modified before that meeting on the 22nd.
And I'd love to see this eventually go on the town website then, once we adopt it. So it's, but it's got a lot of cool stuff in there. It's not that long of a document, but it does have links to more information. So it is very informative.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah,
got a
Bill,
comment.
Michael has his hand up. Bill.
So does-
Tree committee gave you a lot of,
Hold on.
oh,
Let's
I'm
go
sorry,
through the-
Bill. I thought
Let's
this
go
was an open discussion.
No, it isn't actually. It's the town board. So Bennett's got his hand up. Go
Okay,
ahead, Bennett.
Thank, I want to and the Complete Streets Committee first for the work. Great job. And I know we're all tired, so I won't say much more than that. The other thing that I would like to ask is, are other boards and committees going to take a look at this, or have you planned to make presentation now that you've made the presentation to the town board as well, to solicit any of their comments?
We have been in the process of doing that in the past month and a half or so, since we finished the final draft of it. We've gotten to some of the committees. We have not gotten to all of them yet, but we will.
That's great. Thank you very much for doing that. I really appreciate the collaborative effort that you guys take in making this happen. And it is definitely necessary. Our streets and sidewalks really need attention. And so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Michael, did you have a quick comment or a question?
yes, tree committee did submit comments and with photos like from like the 1930s and 40s and 50s and 60s, showing, you know, historically how many street trees we've lost basically in Woodstock. And I had two questions. One is, are we going to get a response from the streets, Complete Streets Committee to our comments? And the other question is, are we going to have a sit down to actually at some point start identifying where new trees can be planted along sidewalks?
Absolutely yes to both, Michael.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
okay.
And Grace, if I may, so I didn't know what Bennett said. I'm not sure. I know you came to the zoning revision committee, but I didn't recall setting the policy. So perhaps all of us on the town board for the committees we're liaisons to, we could forward the policy to those committees.
The policy has been forwarded to all of the committees.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Reggie or Maria-Elena, did you have any comments or questions before we moved on?
No, other than thank you to Complete Streets, and haven't had a chance to look at the policy sent out for the storm, but I will check it out and be in touch. And not related to anything, but hi, Joan, after.
Okay, next up, we have the Ulster County Trails Advisory Committee to the Legislature. Kevin Smith and Carl Beard.
Thank you, Bill. Really appreciate it, and appreciate the fact that you're holding this meeting tonight after the last 5 days.
Thank you.
It's been extraordinary as a resident to watch the effort that's been mobilized here, and I just can't tell you how grateful I am, and I know I speak for thousands of other residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am Kevin Smith. I serve as board chair of the Woodstock Land Conservancy. Some of you know me in that role. I also have served for the last 2 years as the chair of the Ulster County Trails Advisory Committee. It's an advisory committee to the county legislature and to the county executive. And we advise on matters relating to trails, including the Ulster Delaware corridor, which extends from Kingston, from the roundout actually, originally, all the way to the county line at Highmount at the base of Bel Air Ski Center. And as well on all the other trails in the county. These are both backcountry trails, mountain trails, the kind we're familiar with in the Forest Preserve, as well as what we have taken to calling front country trails and shared use trails. And especially, as you'll see in the report we're about to give a presentation on, our rail trail system. We, in 2019, 2020, it became very apparent that all of the work that's been done over many decades now on the part of so many different groups and individuals, government agencies, municipalities, nonprofits, community groups, and individuals, including land trusts like my own, that the county was on the brink of realizing something quite extraordinary, that what started as a series of unconnected, discrete trails that were on some of our old abandoned rail corridors, we started to see that these individual trails were starting to link and merge together into what was going to become a network, a unified network, and a unified trail system. I want to introduce my colleague, Carl Beard. Carl retired recently from the National Park Service. And Carl has served as a technical advisor to the Woodstock Land Conservancy, to the Ulster County, to Kingston Land Trust, and his career has basically spanned the evolution of the rail trail movement in the United States. So I wanted to ask Carl to, I'm going to hand it off to Carl to talk a little bit about the evolution of what we now see as the spine of a non-motorized and recreational trail network in Ulster County. Carl?
Great. Thanks, Kevin, and thanks, Bill. Thanks to all the board members, for entertaining us or listening to us on a night like this.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you
Boy,
for being here.
Yeah. What I'd like to do is to show you some of the highlights from a report that we did with the Ulster County Trails Advisory Committee in 2020, actually into 2021. And what I'd like to do is to, just run through some of the high points of that. We can get you hard copies of this report and easily send you links to an online version where you can, look at it at your leisure. So what I'd like to do is to share my screen and
So Michelle, I think you have the button to do that. So that Carl, there should be a button down there to share screen on the bottom. So Carl, also, while you're getting ready, if you could send this all to us so that Jackie can put it in the minutes, that'd be great.
Okay, Kevin, he can send you the links.
Perfect.
Now, can you see my screen from
Yes.
here? Okay, good. This is the State of the Trails report. And why this? Why now? What we realized right at the turn of the year was that in 2019, 2020, the county was home to 20 new miles of rail trail. These are front country trails, like Kevin mentioned, shared use trails, not hiking trails and things like this, but trails that are really for people, where people live and in communities and between communities, suitable for all kinds of non-motorized use. And we say that the county is being transformed. What do we mean by that? Some of the things that happened in those couple of years were unimaginable 20 years before. For example, Shokan Rail Trail, you've all seen it, opened that area for the first time to the general public in 100 years. The Hudson Valley Rail Trail, which goes between Highland and New Paltz, the Route 299 corridor, that nobody had really, well, a few of us planners envisioned a trail there, but we were invited to keep quiet about it because it could never happen. Now it's real. New Paltz is connected to Highland and to Walkway with an off-road trail. One of the most interesting to me, River to Ridge Trail, which connects New Paltz to the Mohonk Preserve, 6 miles, where there was no previous trail infrastructure, made out of just sprang from the head of Zeus, where there was nothing before. And I think that's a really interesting model, because I can tell you that people in Kingston are now looking at the Ashokan Rail Trail with this kind of picture in mind, connecting places where people live to places where people want to go. And I invite people in Woodstock to think about complete streets and other means of connecting where you live to the Ashokan Rail Trail and to Kingston and to points beyond, which I'll say a little bit more about. Kingston Point Rail Trail, our first urban rail trail right in the city of Kingston. And of course, the big picture, the Empire State Trail, 750 miles, starting in New York City, coming up through Dutchess into Ulster, back out of Ulster, up to Albany, out to Buffalo, and north to the Canadian border. That's transformation. We're being transformed with these things. How does that happen? Again, this is a picture of the opportunity that Ulster County has inherited from its history. There are 4 main rail corridors: the U&D corridor, Ulster and Delaware, that at the top of the screen, the O&W, which is the Ontario and Western corridor that goes down toward Ellenville and beyond, the Walkill Valley line, that's now mostly Walkill Valley Rail Trail, and then the Hudson Valley Rail Trail, which is partly on the old Maybrook line, coming between Highland and New Paltz. River to Ridge. And also, you may not be able to see, but there's a dotted line that shows the route of the Empire State Trail winding through the state, through the county and beyond. So that's the basic infrastructure that we're looking at. The green stuff on this map is the stuff that's done, that's trail now. The yellow stuff is the stuff that's in process, in progress. Actually, some of this is a little bit obsolete. Some of that's now green. And the red is the standing opportunity, the stuff that is in other uses or unused right now. Whoops, what happened there? There we go. Not all trails are as gorgeous as this. Great views. This is the Rosendale Trestle. If you haven't been there, go. But trails are about places, and they're about people. They connect people to places, people to people, places to places, and those are the important things that they do. Some of the use is recreational, obviously, enjoying these places. Some of the use is also walking and bicycling for transportation, going from point A to point B, and all of these kinds of trails share those uses, but in different proportions depending on where they are. So it's not only recreation, it's also transportation.
Yeah, as you said, it's one plus two roads.
Now, people have figured out that these uses are attractive, and we have good records that Ulster County Rail Trails received over 600,000 visitors in 2019. We actually think this is a conservative number. It's closer to 800,000. And this is pre-COVID, when we saw all those numbers go up. So this is kind of baseline usage. And again, we're not ignoring other kinds of trails, 190 miles of hiking trails in the Catskill Forest Preserve, 135 miles of trails and carriageways in the Mohawk-Minnewaska complex. There are plenty of other kinds of trails, but this is 600,000 on the rail trails alone.
Plymouth offers permanent
Now,
services for the home.
one of the early things that I learned in my work is that good trails are good business. And Ulster County earned about $10 million conservatively.
Carl?
Again. Yes.
If you could, someone is not muted. If they could please mute themselves.
Already. So a lot of these houses
Yeah, I'm hearing some audio too. Thanks.
there that are just ruining Seattle instead of being in jail when they break laws. Yeah, well, if someone
It looks like Roger at Mudd. Roger at Mudd, can you go on mute, please?
Michelle, can you mute everyone except
Except this.
Carl?
Okay, thank you. The county derived about $10 million this is direct spending from trail users in 2019. Again, this is pre-COVID. Yeah, how does that happen? Are we confident in our numbers? Yes. We base these on our numbers on about 50 studies from around the country that have looked at these kinds of things, and just look at the way the numbers add up. Here, if you and I went out on a trail, we'd spend somewhere between $3 and $13 per day per person. That expenditure goes up depending on where you come from. If you come from farther away, you spend more here because you're probably buying gas, things like that, maybe lunch. And if you stay overnight, the number goes up again for every day by the amount of that hotel stay that you stay. So it's good for local users, keeps local dollars circulating locally, and it's good in importing dollars from other communities. No secret, trails boost local businesses. Some businesses have invested significantly because of the trail. We've spoken to business owners. Some of them too. And actually, trails create good jobs, and actually, rail trails create more jobs per mile than do highway, because we use more things like landscape architects and other kinds of designers, more jobs for more kinds of people. And there's an interesting study that shows that about for every $1 spent on invested in trails for physical activity yields almost $3 in direct medical benefits, avoided medical costs. Why is that? It's because proximity counts. The closer you live to a trail, the more likely you are to meet, the exercise standards of every major health organization in the country. We all know the drill: 30 minutes, 5 days a week of good exercise. And it really does help address issues of obesity, heart disease, diabetes, the three big ones that get all of us most commonly. And these goals are actually reflected in Ulster County's CHIP, the Community Health Improvement Plan. There's language in there that specifically mentions proximity to trails, walkable streets, things like that, as important for meeting the county's health goals. It's right in there. We invite you to go look for it. We can send you the references if you're interested.
If I can just mention in that regard that one of the goals there is that people have convenient access to the trails, no matter where they live or no matter what their socioeconomic background is, that they have convenient, free access to trails for this. And this is one of the reasons for that. It's an equity issue. Thanks, Carl.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. You shouldn't always have to get into a car to go for a walk. You should be able to start walking where you are and walk or bicycle. And during COVID, again, we did a lot of learning, hard learning, when we had enormous surges in trail usages, and the trails really proved themselves as what I call essential public infrastructure. And I really argue that they're as important to public health as any hospital, any clinic, any gym or YMCA. They're that important to a community's health. You've probably been there. You know it. You need to go for a walk sometimes, and it's good for our kids. Most of us learned to ride bicycles on streets as kids. Today, kids don't do that so much, and trails really are a better place for that to happen. Where we are today, we have about 75 miles of completed shared use trails in the county, of a potential 120, 125, something like that. Again, looking at those colors. The green stuff is done, red stuff is standing opportunities, excuse me. Now, what are the next steps given where we are now? We think that there are some important things we can do. One is to complete that network, fill in the red and the yellow stuff that I showed you on the map. Closing about 4 or 5 gaps would connect most of the major communities in the county. Doesn't enfranchise everybody. Some communities would still be disenfranchised, but a large part of the population is reachable with a few gaps. Weaving the trails into communities. This isn't just like trailheads. It's also complete streets. It's signage. Those linkages that make the trails work with a community. And there are a couple of examples of those that have already happened. Since we now are looking at this countywide complex, we think we really need to start coordinating the management and stewardship promotion of all of these trails. And part of that really is to do a better job of counting users. It's hard to manage things that you can't measure, and measuring use is important. And then to do a more deliberate job of capturing the health and economic benefits. And there's a publication called the Trail Towns Manual that shows a deliberate way of approaching these kinds of things. Now, it's about taking those next steps. What you're seeing here is the report ended in 2020, but the momentum hasn't stopped. There's a lot going on. And these gold stars here show you places where projects are either underway, recently completed, or trying to get off the ground to make some of these connections into communities and between communities. And just some of the things, just running through the list, and Big Indian to High Mount, looking at this section of rail trail and connecting to the state's new complex of mountain bike trails up in that area. In Boysville, the Five Arches Bridge is going to be replaced, and that's opened an opportunity nobody anticipated to actually create a direct link from the end of the Ashokan Rail Trail right into the hamlet of Boysville, possibly right up to the school and across Route 28. Safe off-road, transportation there. I've got an Empty Star at Town of Woodstock's interface with the Ashokan Rail Trail. We can talk about that. But other things happening in Kingston. The Kingston Midtown Linear Park is in construction and is expected to open this year. The old Kingston Freeman building, its redevelopers are looking at creating an off-road link and a trailhead for the O&W Rail Trail right as a part of the redevelopment of that building there. Businesses are getting involved, seeing an advantage for themselves there. Down in Marbletown, the town just completed a linkage between Stone Ridge and the Ulster County Community College, an off-road trail across private land. Enabling students and people to do things like that. That's another one of those river to ridge type scenarios, just made up out of who knows what, a thoughtful community. A couple of trails are getting regrades, the Wallkill Valley, the O&W Rail Trail, and Walkway Over the Hudson is adding 100 parking spaces because of popular use there. And Open Space Institute got a grant to study the entire O&W rail trail corridor, railroad corridor from Kingston down to Port Jervis, 67 or 70 miles of that corridor, looking at opportunities there. So these are the kinds of things that are in the works now that we are encouraged by, and we think can help continue the transformation of Ulster County and its component communities. So if you think that bicycling isn't important in your town, this is a Strava Heat Map. This is something that shows your little self-monitoring fitness device. All of that data is uploaded, and this is a year summary of cycling use in and around Woodstock. And basically what it shows you, this hot line, the denser the line, the more use you're seeing. This line here is the Ashokan Rail Trail. And if you were to look at other parts of the same Strava heat map, you'd see that the usage on that is about the same as the carriage road system in Mohonk and Minnewaska. It's that level of intensity of use. Same thing as Walkway Over the Hudson. Very intense use. And people are cycling your roads and getting onto the rail trail from there. So that's kind of the picture. We want to thank you. We want to thank everyone who's brought us to this point, and we want to thank you for hearing us out tonight. And we'd love to hear questions, comments.
Hey, Carl, do you by chance have the Boysville Bridge flyover?
I
That
do.
would be great. I think that people would really appreciate seeing that if you have that. One of the amazing opportunities that Woodstock has is that from the center part, say 212, the Bearsville, Woodstock corridor, it's about 15 minutes equidistant to any of the three major trailheads at Woodstock Dyke in West Hurley at the east end of the trail, Ashokan or the Ashokan Station trailhead in the center, and the Boysville trailhead in the at the western terminus of the trail. So we think these community connections are really important. Carl brought one up, the Boysville Five Arches Bridge replacement project, which is now underway. And as part of the agreement between Ulster County and New York City DEP to build the Ashokan Rail Trail, DEP also agreed when they did the Five Arches Bridge replacement that they would create a direct connection from the Ashokan Rail Trail up onto the new bridge. And they are putting a fully protected pedestrian bicycle lane, two-way bicycle pedestrian lane on one side of that bridge from the rail trail out to Route 28. And at that point, it's being picked up by New York State DOT. And they are putting a multi-use pathway alongside 28 up to level with Bennett School, where there will be a hawk signal, a pedestrian crosswalk with on-demand button and flashers to warn drivers to slow down. I believe that might be the first signalized crosswalk on Route 28 from the traffic circle in Kingston all the way to the county line. There are no signalized pedestrian crosswalks that I'm aware of on Route 28. We just had a fatality at the intersection near Potter Brothers, the stoplight intersection there. A woman was killed there just in the last month trying to cross Route 28 there. So these community connections are really important. Carl, do you have that flyover?
I do. It's
Or
a
not?
2-minute video, if you'll, and I think it starts to play immediately once you wake it up. Wait a minute, let's make it full screen.
So as Carl was saying, this was something that we really didn't conceive of years ago. You're looking at this will be the new permanent Boysville Trailhead. Those of you who go to the rail trail know that right now it's been gravel because that was a temporary or interim trailhead. You see the trail going under a redesigned railroad bridge to improve the sight lines on 28A, and then Cloverleaf looping up onto the new bridge, protected facility, out to Route 28, where there will be a pedestrian bike path on the shoulder within the state highway right-of-way on 28 up to the school. And we wanted to show you that because it's really the first of these community connection projects, and it's a really good one. These are the kinds of connections we'd like to see at the rail trail, really weaving the trail into the community and really linking it to our important community institutions, Onteora School District being one of them. So with that, I don't want to take any more of your time, but we would open it up. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Did you get your work done?
Yep. Well, I always have a question.
Hold on.
So I don't know whether
Laura, hold on one second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could everybody else please mute because we can hear a lot of feedback and it's a little disruptive.
Try making the habit. Every time I come in here, I find like cups and stuff like that. So you don't
Do we know,
Yes.
Michelle? Carl, can you give back the screen so that we can have the full screen?
Yeah, because I can't, I only see 6 people. Okay.
Hey, Ben.
So I'm
Come
gonna
down to
mute
watch your show
everybody
and you're not
and
having
then,
dessert if you're not bathed.
okay, and no dessert for you tonight. Let me unmute everybody.
Yep.
Hi,
Unmute.
I'm
go ahead, Laura.
I'm back. Okay. So,
Okay.
and I know you just unshared your screen, so you can't show the picture. But when you have the picture of all the trails in Ulster County, which of course, none of them are actually in Woodstock, if we were to have a trail that went from someplace in Woodstock reaching out to other places, what would the next steps? And first of all, it's extremely impressive. Thank you both, Kevin and Carl, for your presentations. The progress is extremely impressive. And I've been on the Ashokan Rail Trail. I've also, of course, done the walkway over the Hudson Lake. I think everybody else has done lots of times. And the Ashokan is certainly very close and beautiful and wonderful. And I think what you're doing at Boysville is fabulous. The fact that you have a bike trail and it's safe from cars because of all the construction. So a lot of excellent work. But if we wanted to have Woodstock tie in someplace, because of course all your trails, none of them actually go through Woodstock, they kind of go around Woodstock. As Kevin knows, he knows that we have a Complete Streets Committee because he's at the meetings like I am. So how would we, between the Complete Streets Committee and Kevin, you and Carl in collaboration, if we were to have a vision of how to get Woodstock connected, how would we? And I'll continue by saying that, like, we have Overlook Mountain Trail. I mean, we do have trails in Woodstock, but they're not on your map and they're not really connected, but we do have trails. And it would be great if we could somehow be part of this program. So next steps, my question is, what are the next steps?
Yeah, well, I think Woodstock has taken the first most important step, which is was actually creating and authorizing a complete streets committee. So that is really the first step. And I think there's a lot of interesting ways that the town, the village of Woodstock, because people live all over town. And there is, as Carl mentioned, there is a corner of the UND corridor at Basin Road and Route 28 that is within the municipality of Woodstock. And that would be one of the logical places to, it would be a complete streets solution that would utilize our roads and probably some of our less busy roads wherever we can, and creating a route to the rail trail that would be safe, and then developing a project that would make an interconnection there at Xena Road, Basin Road, Route 28 to the rail trail, something analogous to what's being done in Boysville as we speak, and what happened with the River to Ridge Trail in New Paltz, where you start to link the community into the trail. And then, as Carl mentioned earlier, in our view, it's really important that the county policy that's in force today that calls for the future connectivity, trail connectivity between Kingston and the Ashokan Rail Trail, that be realized in the future, so that Woodstock and the Route 28 communities have the benefit of connecting and being part of this amazing recreational trail and non-motorized transportation network.
I would like to say something about the Complete Streets Committee does in fact have a Paths and Trails Subcommittee, which are working and together and with the county and with the town, we hope to come up with the best solution for connecting Woodstock to the trail network, because I think it's beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, in my view, you've taken the most important first step, just like Kevin said. You formed a committee. You're working on a policy. You've got a working group. You have people who are starting to focus on this. Then it's, in the future, reaching out to partners, the land trust community, local businesses, local landowners, things like that, to see what's possible. To start kicking the tires, your bike tires, on some of these ideas. Try on a lot of ideas.
Bennett, you had your hand. You have a question?
Yes, thank you very much. Excellent work. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Kevin. I'd be interested in finding out more information about the River to Ridge Trail and how you did put it together. And I think it might hold some promise for us at Woodstock to connect that piece of Woodstock to the rail trail at Woodstock also. Right there at the Route 28. Not in this meeting, obviously, but I think that might be a really good place for us to begin learning about what happened there to make that trail possible.
We could absolutely, yes, we'd be happy to talk about that, to dialogue about that. We in the county have an extraordinary partner in the Open Space Institute. That Woodstock, the town of Woodstock and Woodstock Land Conservancy has worked on partnership conservation purchases going back to 2000 or so, Bill, I think, with the Save Overlook campaign.
Yeah.
And the River to Ridge Trail was a partnership project between the town of Woodstock, town of New Paltz, and the Mohunk Preserve and Open Space Institute. And, I would mention one other, amazing serendipitous connection here, which is the Bluestone Wild Forest at Onteora Lake and Jockey Hill, also through a partnership with the Open Space Institute and My Land Conservancy and DEC and the local mountain bike club. We now have 29 miles of connected multi-use trails between Onteora Lake and Jockey Hill, and a portion of those is within the town of Woodstock. The northern portion of the Ontario Lake Trails is within the town of Woodstock. So we would very much like to see a non-motorized, safe connection between the village and Bluestone Wild Forest. And there's a very nearby connection to the Xena Road, Basin Road junction as well. So we see big possibilities here, just like River to Ridge.
I've shared with a number of people over the last couple of years my dream of doing an affordable housing project out there on Xena Road, just down from Stewart's. And Kevin, I know I've shared with you how nice it would be, how easy it would be to put a trail in through there from the Bluestone Preserve through the community and right out onto 28 and onto the rail trail. And so definite possibilities there. So
yes, there are.
Any other board members have any questions? Michelle, did you have a question? Look like you're raising your hand.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I look forward to continuing to work on this. It's very exciting possibilities out there. And I think between this group and the Complete Streets, we'll all be getting a lot more exercise.
Great. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. You look tired.
Thank you
man.
to all the town board members.
I'm a little tired, Carl. Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to move into a couple of resolutions. Be it resolved, in accordance with civil service rules and regulations, the employment of Justin Gruby is terminated effective February 2nd, 2022 for failure to complete probationary period.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Be it resolved, in accordance with civil service rules and regulations, the appointment of Patrick Westfeld is terminated effective February 2nd, 2022 for failure to complete probationary period.
Second.
All in
Somebody
favor?
else got it. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Be resolved to hire Thomas Domino as grade 3 MEO for the town of Woodstock Highway Department at a rate of $21.86 effective February 22nd, 2022.
Second.
Well, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Be resolved to promote Timothy W. Keefe as the water sewer department to a grade 4 laborer at a rate of $24.45 effective February 7th, 2022.
Second.
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 go ahead.
So the reason for this promotion is that Tim recently passed and received his sewer license. So he's got that. We were anxiously awaiting the possibility of having a second operator. The next step for Tim is his water license, which we hope he receives in the next 6 months or so, and that would come with another promotion. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
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 All right, so whereas the Birds and Bees Protection Act concerns use of neonicotinoids, you got it, or neonics, which is a class of neurotoxic pesticides that include, and the town clerk will include those in the official resolution. And whereas research shows that widespread use of neonicotinoids insecticides is a leading cause of decline in honeybees as well as wild pollinators and a threat to birds, bats, fish, and the entire ecosystem. And whereas New York State's agricultural economy depends on healthy populations of bees and other pollinators to produce valuable and healthy foods like apples, squash, tomatoes, cherries, and other top crops worth an estimated $439 million annually. And whereas the United States Environmental Protection Agency and other independent research has found that neonics can harm human health, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has found that half of Americans are regularly exposed to neonics. And whereas the federal and state water testing has detected neonics in waters across New York State, with 30% of Long Island groundwater samples containing a neonic, neonic. And whereas a recent Cornell study review of over 1,100 peer-reviewed papers on neonics and cost-benefit analysis of neonics against their likely alternatives concluded that neonics treatment of corn, soybean, and wheat seeds, which account for roughly 3/4 of all neonics used in New York State agriculture, produced no overall net economic income benefit to farmers using them. And whereas the bill would, 1, prohibit sale and use of neonic treated corn, soybean, and wheat seeds effective January 1st, 2024, and 2, prohibit non-agricultural uses of neonics on turf and ornamental plants effective January 1st, 2023, and 3, require the New York Department of Environmental Conservation to consider designated other neonics uses as a restricted use pesticide in order to protect bird and bee and bird populations. A restricted use pesticide is a pesticide that can be purchased, possessed, or used only by a person with a commercial or purchase permit used by DEC, and that may be subject to other restrictions on its use as determined by the DEC. The bill allows the DEC to permit use of neonics to combat invasive species, including but not limited to the emerald ash borer, the hemlock woolly algid, and 4, require DEC to, in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture and Markets at Cornell University, to study alternatives to neonics. And whereas the Birds and Bees Protection Act addresses a serious threat to pollinators and ecosystems, and safeguards the future of New York's food system by banning high-risk, low to no benefit uses of neonicotinoid insecticides. Now therefore be it resolved, the town of Woodstock does hereby support AS 699B/A7429, banning neonic treated corn, soybean, and wheat, and most outdoor non-agricultural uses of neonics. And be it further resolved, Woodstock Town Board authorized the town clerk to provide a copy of this resolution to Governor Kathy Hochul, Basil Seagos, the New York State Commissioner of Department of Conservation, Howard Zucker, the New York State Commissioner of Health, Richard Ball, the New York State Commissioner of Department of Agriculture, Assemblyman Kevin Cahill, and Senator Michelle Inchie.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Bennett?
Yeah. Yes, I would just ask that we insert Mary Bass. She's the new New York State Commissioner of Health. Howard Zucker is no longer.
Okay, we'll change that name. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Last thing, we're gonna, as I mentioned, so originally I had put on, Bennett, you had asked to talk about the CEA tonight, and Maria-Elena, you wanted to talk about ARP funding, and I promised that that's already on the agenda for next week, so we'll discuss that. Also, we recently got a letter back from SHPO regarding the Como, which I believe Richard was going to email to you. I have a paper copy that I was going to have Ashley scan and send tomorrow, but I think Richard will probably beat her to that. So we'll have a discussion about that as well. And so I just wanted to wrap up for a moment, talking a little about the last 5 days. So I have a little prepared statement here. So Storm Lamont, and I didn't realize that we're now labeling ice and snowstorms, but there you have it, was one for the record books. I can't remember a storm in the last 30 years that caused as much outages for as long a time. I do remember past hurricanes where it may have looked worse, but this one is a record. And I just want to give a small list of some of the folks who stepped up for our community. This is not a full list. It's just a representative of some of the people and some of the groups that really stepped up. And really the first group I would like to acknowledge is all Woodstockers, because I think as a community, as a supervisor, I couldn't be prouder of the way our town stepped up to the plate, how people pulled together, how they took care of one another, how they looked out for one another, how they helped out where they could. And it's often said that trying times bring out the best in people, and this is just the perfect example of that. Second group is the town employees. I mean, this is par for the course. I say this every time we have an issue, but once again, I mean, they all just really stepped up to the challenge. I think the PD and the dispatch, along with all the hundreds of calls they've done in the last couple of days, they've been doing welfare checks. They've been driving people, transporting people to the shelter. They've been taking calls and comforting people. Boney and the gentleman and lady out at the highway garage. I mean, once again, they did a spectacular job at keeping the roads safe and passable so that all the repair crews could get through and so that we could get around. And, as always, Pam and my deputy Lynn really just step up to the plate once again to help me with logistics here. And Lynn, you were even in a couple times over the weekend. So real great thank you to you guys. The fire department and company 5, the ambulance squad, on top of dealing with multiple calls, you got it, Judy. Over the last 5 days, they dealt with a major structure fire in the middle of the night. It couldn't have been under worse circumstances, and everybody just performed and did a great job. And on top of that, we had mutual aid from all our surrounding towns. So it's, not only did Woodstockers pull together, but other communities really just pulled together for us. I thank the Red Cross, and as an example, two of their great employees, Nancy and Lisa, were 2 of their employees that staffed our shelter and helped set it up. And they were up from Jersey. They did the day shift and they were phenomenal. They just really cared about our community there and just did whatever it took. Likewise, Senator Michelle Hinchy and Legislator Jonathan Hepner, as well as the town board, worked really hard at helping to get that shelter up and running. And it couldn't have been done without any of you. And in particular, Councilman Earls, you spent the first 36 hours there, making sure the generator kept running and the heat was maintained. So it was just a phenomenal job by you guys. As well, the town board, along with a number of volunteers, manned the phones. We started a tradition, actually started by dispatch many years ago, where in events like this, we reach out to our seniors. And we've really expanded on that. And Maria-Elena, you spearheaded it, but all the town board were making phone calls. And I made my own number of phone calls too. And it was interesting because sometimes we had crossover, but everybody was just so touched and appreciative of it. And I even have some messages here on the office where people we may not have reached in person, but who got the message and called back to really just thank us. So, thank you for that. It was a great comfort to the town. The National Guard. The National Guard was also brought in to assist with the shelter and deal with a number of other things. And those guys were great. At one point, somebody said, well, are they here for security? And I said, no, we don't need security. This is Woodstock. We don't need, they're here to help us. They're here to serve you lunch. They're here to make sure you stay warm. And that's really what they did. They were just phenomenal. And in particular, and this is probably for me, the highlight, the most touching moment for me was dealing with Phyllis. Phyllis was probably in her 90s. She was bedridden. She can't really articulate too well. She's not very mobile. And Phyllis was with her aide in her house on around the corner from the Rock City Road Community Center. And we couldn't get her. We tried to get the police to get her over and we couldn't get her in the car. So I went back to the community center and asked, and the 3 airmen, it was Airman Wright and Fish and Sergeant Fitzsimmons, got in their big pickup truck and drove around the corner and assisted us in getting her in there. And, it took an effort, but it was just wonderful. And we got her shelter and we got her food and she was there for a couple of days. And what was even better is that 2 days later, Peter Kagan and Emily Mangusman, as well as Fire Chief Kevin Peters, helped me bring her back to her house. And the smile on her face when we put her back in her bed, I will never forget. It was just priceless. So I thank them for that. One other person, and I hope she's still on the line here. I see her sitting there. Jackie Manganero, you two were just a consummate pro over there at the shelter, helping and more advocating for people there. You did a tremendous job. The Red Cross all thought you worked for the town. I mean, you're fantastic, Jack. So thank you for that. And two more. Central Hudson. You know, I did get a couple of calls from frustrated people. I know we were all frustrated with their power being out, but Central Hudson did a tremendous job. What they did in the last 5 days is just unbelievable. They had 1,000 individuals, many from outside the area, between linemen and crews. And it was just a phenomenal effort. And I know it's always frustrating, but they worked in single-degree temperatures. They were going for 14, 16-hour days. And one in particular, George Defoe, was the lineman foreman in Woodstock. And he was just a consummate professional. He was wonderful to deal with. There was no BS. He gave me the straight, and it was just an incredible pleasure to deal with. So I thank him, and I've already called the CEO at Central Hudson to really let him know that man deserves a medal. And I know that he's just one of many, but you know, he's a shining example. And the last person I thank is my wife, Hillary, because she kept our house intact. She kept things running there, and she made it easy for me not have to worry about what was going on at home. I knew that everything was protected, and it really allowed me to focus fully on the town. So I thank everybody. I mean, it was just a phenomenal job. So we all deserve a pat on the back. Yep.
I also want to thank a lot of the folks that provided the food donations. I thought that was wonderful. Catskill Mountain Pizza, they jumped in and helped, and as well as other folks that came and provided food. So I just wanted to thank them as well.
Many stories like that. You know, our shopkeepers all really chipped in. So I don't know if anybody else on the board wants to chime in quickly and add to that.
I'd like to. I want to say, as I think we all know, we have a new board as of January, just a month ago. And watching, of course, Bill, I knew Bill was stepping up because he always steps up. And I know Reggie, because we've been working together, but you know, Bennett and Maria-Elena, everybody jumping in there. So just wanted to point out, I think the board was certainly great, getting the warming center together and calling the seniors. We had a big list of seniors to call. And we had help with that from Linda Lover and Amy Fraden, who jumped in and also helped us make those calls. So I think it's great that we have a new board that's really showing their passion and caring for Woodstock in terms of everybody really stepping up with this. So the Red Cross, as Bill said, very impressive. The warming center was totally impressive. The other volunteers, Bill mentioned Jackie. I know even Tony Wiedenbacher. I was making my seniors calls. I called Tony and she said, we need some signs pointing to the warming center so even more people know. And she just went out and did it. She just went out and made some signs and put them in the center of town. People like Serena Ratcliffe, a teenager who said, let's go take some food before the official food showed up. Let's go take some food to the community center. A teenager showing what teenagers can do, setting a good example. So all of that was good. I saw there was a Governor Hochul video. If you go to YouTube, you can find it. There's a couple of Kathy Hochul videos on YouTube, but there's one that's about a half an hour long. And Governor Hochul delivers update on winter storm in Ulster County, about a half hour long. It has our county exec, Pat Ryan. It has Red Cross. It has National Guard. It has Michelle Hinchy, different speakers, and goes through it all. Central Hudson was there as well. They said it was the worst storm they had to deal with in their 120 years. So as Bill said, it was huge. Everybody I talked to said they've never seen it before. I've been here 42 years. I've never seen it before. But Central Hudson said it was the worst storm they had to deal with in 120 years. And I think we should thank every lineman who's up there in 5-degree temperature with the rain coming down on them, dealing with hot wires. It's got to be a scary thing. And so we have a lot to thank Central Hudson for. I heard a lot of neighbors helping neighbors when I made my senior calls. People saying proud of our town and Woodstock getting back to the community that it's supposed to be. So I think people really saw what Bill talked about of the community coming together. What I would say, if you haven't done it, is we made the senior calls. I think the source of our phone call, of our telephone list, is the Board of Elections. If you don't have your phone number current with the Board of Elections, I would hope people do, because that's how we know to reach out to you. So if people
Actually, Laura, that's not correct. The source of the list that we use, it was put together by dispatch and Karen Schultes in the assessor's office through the STAR program applications.
Well, thank you.
So that's Woodstock generated. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've emailed that out to all the board, and we want to really work hard in the next couple of weeks to update it, to add people, or maybe some people don't want to be on it, and really make it more efficient. One of the things we talked about was adding whether you have a generator or not.
So there you go. But anyway, lots of people to thank, and it was a huge undertaking. And remember the volunteers in your life, because it might have been your neighbor offering you a place to stay. So everybody can remember the volunteers in your life that helped you through this, because we had at least 4 people and tell us we could sleep at their house. We stayed home to keep the pipes from freezing because we had to keep the generator going. But it was just amazing, the people that offered help.
Right. Bennett, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Bill, I would just say, thanks to you. You did a great job vaccination program when the pandemic hit and putting that together. And now you've turned the community center, into a warm center for the cross. And just thank you very much for your leadership on really tough pastors for our community.
Thank you. Well, listen, though, I can't do it alone. Again, the board has been, you guys have supported and helped me with this, and the town employees. It's really a group effort. I get to be the front person sometimes, but without that group behind me, it'd be nothing. One other group that I want to quickly mention that I forgot, I left off, and I'm really remiss, is the other town supervisors. Particularly Jim Quigley from Ulster. Jim and I probably talked, I'm going to say no less than 10 times a day over the last 5 days, either through text or through phone calls. And Jim was really the hub, but through him, there was contact with Fred Costello over in Saugerties and Jim Safranco up in Olive, and supervisors further down the line. And it's really comforting to know we have each other's back. We've all offered support to each other, whatever we needed. I was on the phone several times with Peter Humphrey from Hurley, bringing folks from Hurley up to the shelter. So it was just really great to see. So, Reggie, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I'll say quickly, just really seconding everything that everyone said. As Bennett mentioned about you, Bill, the first night, the very next morning, after the first night at the center, it was maybe 5 o'clock, and I said, well, I'll wait an hour to call Bill because something happened, and it was really early. And before 6 a.m., Bill was walking through the front door, and really did, keep a lot of things going, lots of phone calls, lots of text. Thank you to everybody. I do want to say thank you to Heather. I don't know Heather's last name. I think it's Heather Free, but that could just be
Heather Free, Dino.
Yes, and Dino, who brought pizza through the door at maybe almost midnight from what's the name of the restaurant? Bennett, we were talking.
Catskill.
No, it wasn't Catskill Mountain Pizza. It was very late. Bennett, we were talking about it. The name of the restaurant.
Maria's Bazaar?
Yes. And the owner there opened up his restaurant in the middle of the night just to make pizza. And walked through the door with that. And Sam, who came with them. I said a few years ago when I quit a full-time job but didn't have another job lined up, I said, if I'm going to struggle, I want to struggle in Woodstock because I know there are people there that are going to make sure I'm okay. And I feel like we really do have a town. If I'm going to go through a catastrophic ice storm, I'm glad it was in Woodstock, because really the level of caring, as much as people talk about all the changes that have happened in town, one thing that has not changed is the caring that neighbors have for each other. Neighbors like Kevin Christofora, who had someone elderly that he was concerned about, and he had to go out of town, but wanted to make sure that I checked on her the next morning. We had one of our officers went and checked on her. It may have even been Bill, checked on her. She was fine. Just everyone pitching in, everyone helping, all the police officers, dispatch I was on the phone with many times. They were all great. Again, just really wonderful show of care that we have for each other in Woodstock. And thank you to everyone.
Thank you. And Maria-Elena, did you have any more to add?
No, the only thing I would add really would be a couple of years ago when we started outreach to seniors for the beginning of the pandemic. It was the assessor's office. It was, the list from dispatch, but also we had the folks, the EMS folks. They're really vital with information that we can add for, seniors in our town. So I would reach out to them as well.
Okay. All right. So Judith, I saw your hand up. I'm not going to go out to the public, but I'll give you the last word before I call the meeting. Oh, actually, I have one more thing. Go ahead, Judith. I'll give you a minute.
I wanted in particular to comment on the rescue squad. I had a carbon monoxide alarm go off, and I would like to talk to you at some point about generators and the things people don't know about what a generator can do. That's negative.
You need to be careful, and it's critical that people just go and get a generator and start it up, and there's a lot more to it, including making sure that
the guys were great, and I'm sure they had lots of other things to worry about and 50 calls lined up. They really took it right.
My deputy did point out, I did skip over one thing. We had a topic. I just quickly wanted to poll the board. We have a couple of applicants for the zoning revision committee and the housing committee, as well as Kate Hagerman. I think Kate Hagerman sent me an email. She's interested in a seat on the WEC. So would you like me to set up interviews next week in executive session prior to our meeting?
Yes, please.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I will set that up for 6 o'clock next Tuesday, and we'll do it by Zoom. And there'll be most likely three interviews that we'll have. Okay, with that, I'm going to move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you, guys. Have a
Good night,
good evening.
everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, Bill.
Thank you all.
Bill,
Call me, Bill.
I will. Thank you.
Good night, Michelle.
What else would I call you, actually? No, I know what you mean. It was too easy. I'll give you a call right now. If I can leave the meeting.